All righty. Are we ready?
I'm ready.
How? I just realized the camera was on me. God damn it. Howdy, folks, and welcome to episode 515 of the Dead Robot Society. I'm Paul Lee Cooley. Joining me is my pain in the ass idiot co-host. He shouldn't call him an idiot. He's making me very angry. Terry Mixon.
Hey, man, how you doing?
Get off my lawn.
That's the best you got. I'm staying on your lawn with your lawn chair, not mine.
Oh, God, we've been talking way too long, and Terry's getting loopy, and thus making me loopy. I'm going to blame him for everything.
Sure,
anyway,
why not?
Terry, what the hell is going on with you, man?
I am almost done writing my section of book for the Glenn Stewart novel.
Woohoo!
I'll finish up this week. I'll finish up.
Hey.
I'm hopeful. I'll be done by Friday. I'll be done by Friday.
Lies and slender.
Then I can start writing on the Empire book. Bum, bum, bum. Maybe they'll actually get to Terra this time.
I'm not buying it, especially not after the conversation we just had.
I have high hopes. High hopes, damn it.
We got high hopes. He's got high hopes. I don't even know what that's from. Anyway, that's not important right now. I'm sure the listeners will be more than happy to tell me what it's just saying. So that's all that's going on. You're finishing up the Glenn Stewart book, and you're going to start on Empire.
It's been eating up a chunk of my time. I've got tooth issues. I think I'm going to have a root canal done. So I've been having a little bit of pain there. It's not what I want to have, but well, that's what I got. Welcome to world. That's what I got.
Yeah, welcome to life.
I'm about ready to go ahead and pull the trigger on starting my Patreon account. At least I think I've settled up what the reward levels we'll get. What else is happening? Freedom Express is about ready to be submitted in audiobook. So Veronica Gier has knocked it out of the park again.
Woo! Yeah.
I've surpassed Paul in the number of audiobooks sold.
Not for long.
For at least like a day.
No, probably till the end of the month, and then we'll see what happens.
That's all totally true. Lots of short stories. I still have one to write for the next omnibus, but I'm just about done with going through the bits and pieces of the compilation short story, the one where somebody is actually telling a story about telling a story.
Right. Yeah,
other authors are putting in. That should be wrapped up this week or early next week.
Yay. And again, I can't wait to see how this turns out.
It's a zoo. It's a freaking zoo. There's nothing like writing a story with having somebody else go ahead and kibitz.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds to me like basically y'all are writing a disaster area.
I don't know that that's it. The interjections are more like, snide comments. Lots of snide comments.
This should be fun. It
is. It seems like it's fun.
You're beyond herding cats. You're herding cats with dogs and cattle at the same time.
I'm herding cats that are riding on cattle. Yes.
Wow. Isn't that a terrifying idea? Cats riding cows. All right. Somebody out there, get on this. I want to see this short story.
I bet you if you look on the internet, you will find that picture.
Oh, I guarantee you will.
There's a picture of a raccoon riding a hog around. Yep. So why not?
I saw that one. Yeah, we're all screwed, especially here in Texas. Those things, if possums start riding hogs, that's the apocalypse right there. That is the apocalypse. Opossums riding hogs, riding javelinas into battle. Yeah, if you don't know what those are, go look them up.
Oh. If I lived out in the country, I would be working hard to have ham all year round.
Oh, you don't want to eat a javelina. Dude, no. Well, now we're done with you. I assume we're done with you.
I'm done.
You're done. I'm still working on Evolution. I've got Gare's Inferno up on Audible. I'm putting out the Black Outbreak up on YouTube, 1 episode a day for the month of October. I'm going to get all that done by Halloween, which means there'll probably be more than 1 episode a day pretty soon. But putting all that up there. And then I had a really strange thing happen last week.
A short story ran over you?
A short story ran over me. So I'll briefly explain this. There was a bike sitting on a lamppost, and I drove by it, and I thought, oh, that's a kid's bike. I guess the kid's like, fucking around in the ditch. And I looked over there to make sure nobody was in there. Last thing I wanted to see was a kid hurt. So I didn't say anything. So I left and went, not really thinking about it. Next day, I was driving back, and I saw it again. And it's right near this huge copse of trees, basically a little forest back there. Copse, whatever. However you want to pronounce it.
Yeah, well, if you've got no shirt on, it's cops.
Anyway, the weather was kind of nasty, as Terry can attest to last week. So I drove by it a third day, and I was like, okay, that's it. Tomorrow I'm calling the cops because this bike has been here. Some kid is missing. It's got to be that. Some kid is missing. So I went home, and Carrie had to work late or whatever. So I sat down and I started writing about this bike. And then I finished basically a 3,200 word short story.
Without going back to look in the woods for the dead body that's undoubtedly hiding there.
The next day, I did. I stopped. I took a look because I was going to call the cops. And then I noticed something. It wasn't a kid's bike. It had a little digital thing on the side of it. Turns out it's a bike for a rideshare program here in the Woodlands.
Oh.
And you rent the bike using an app on your phone, and then you leave it at another station. So the fifth day, it was gone. Somebody had grabbed it and taken it to the next station.
All righty then. Learn something new every day.
Yeah. And I did not know that. I had no clue. And I couldn't tell what kind of bike it was until I stopped, pulled over on the shoulder, and took a look at it. So I got pictures of it. But bottom line is, that came out of nowhere and hit me in the head. So I've been balancing that with evolution. I need to go back and tinker with that short story before I, put it on the market. But I think it turned out really well. It's a very, very Lovecraftian with the weather and everything else that was going on. So I think it's pretty cool. Anyway, I was really happy that I remembered how to write a short story. It didn't turn into a huge novel. It easily could have, trust me. But that was kind of one of those cool moments that just kind of jumped out of nowhere at me. So inspiration, never know when it's going to strike. But other than that, just working on evolution, trying to get it done as quickly as possible because, man, I've got to get to the end of this book. It's killing me. It's killing me. So characters must pay for my impatience.
All righty then.
I'm almost at the apocalyptic battle. I'm almost there. Almost there. Anyway, other than that, not much.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I'll have something else in the market. Gonna finish evolution this month and then get ready for NaNoWriMo.
It's gonna be a lot of fun if you can make it there, man.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to do that episode next week. Anyway, we'll see how that goes. Terry, we did the Swampy Middle because that's where we start because this show always is a Swampy Middle. So
that's for sure.
What would you think would be our very next topic?
How did we get here anyway?
Philosophers have been asking that question through the ages, and I have yet to hear a satisfactory answer. So let's not delve into that. It's too deep a topic for us to discuss. What we did, because we are Discovery writers, is we started with the Swampy Middle. So now we're going to go back and we're going to talk about the first word. How do you begin a story? What are the elements you need to begin a story? So let's see what kind of bullshit came out of us. Terry, there are these things that we have to do.
We've got to do a lot of things.
What I'm talking about one thing in particular. If you're going to tell a story, you kind of have to start somewhere.
Well, the answer to that is simple. Just put one word in front of another, and soon you'll be writing that novel. Okay, maybe not.
We're not talking about the same thing here. But so what else is new? What I'm talking about is that first scene in the book. Doesn't matter where you start writing it. It's what is the first scene of the book or the story that you are going to create the story from afterwards. Where do you start? What is the best place to start? Is there a way to do this so the beginning doesn't scare the shit out of the reader or make them just want to leave?
Yeah, and that's actually a very important thing to consider, is because while you said it doesn't matter where you start, and I'm sure you're meaning you don't have to write the first scene in the book
Correct.
first. You don't have to write linearly, but it is very important that that first scene start at the right place, or it's not going to hook the reader. It's also important that you take that initial opportunity to grab the reader by the throat and drag them into the muck so that they can never escape again. Now, I'm saying this in your way of doing things because, you know, that's the horrible ending sort of thing. So
I don't start my books that way. Well, okay, there are a couple of them that start that way, but no, for the most part, the first scene is rather innocuous. The first scene is usually innocuous, relatively speaking.
And it can be. It just has to be a place that is interesting enough to grab the reader. Something is going on, and it's described in a way that immerses the reader in the story immediately. And that's how you keep a reader in the stories. You've got to immerse them. If you're just telling a surface story, then they're going to be, you know, I could be watching Netflix. And they're gone.
I have read books where I felt like the only reason I continued reading them past the first scene was because of the synopsis. Because I basically bought into the promise because the first scene just bored the shit out of me. But based on the synopsis and word of mouth, I just kept reading. And then sure enough, the second or third scene, I went, oh, wait, now you got my attention.
And you really shouldn't take that chance. As an author, we all need to remember that every single scene is an opportunity for a reader to set your book down and walk away. And we'd like to avoid that.
Sometimes forever.
Sometimes forever. But even if it's just boring, they can set it down and say, oh, I'll come back and pick this up later. And then 3 years later, they go, I wonder whatever happened to that book. Have you ever done that? Have you ever started reading a book or been partway through a book and you just got bored and set it down with the intention of picking it back up later, and then years passed?
Yeah, that happened with Peter F. Hamilton.
It happens with all of us, and we'd really like to avoid having that happen, because when they reach the end of that book is when they go, oh, hey, you know, I kind of like that. I wonder what else the author has.
Yeah, that's where you want to do that.
So you'd rather not have somebody put it down. And the key to doing that is in the beginning of the story. You've got to immerse the reader inside the story. Every time you have a scene break, every time you have a chapter break, you have to immerse them again in the sensory details and the opinions of the character that you're in the point of view. But you especially have to do it in that first scene, whatever you're writing about.
Whatever you're writing about. So let me give you a for instance. I need or want to set something up at the very beginning of the story. I figured out I need this one thing. I need the character to see it and the character to basically not remark on it. I need the readers to see it. And I want to draw their attention to it, but not necessarily the character's attention to it. How do you do that and make it interesting?
Well, I think the key to doing that is to not do that. And that's going to... I'm being serious. I'm actually being serious when I say that. The key is not to set out to intentionally leave them this clue. The key is to tell the story introducing the character and find the appropriate place in doing so to drop the hint.
See, here we go. This is the difference between a plotter. To a certain extent, this is the difference between a plotter and a discovery writer.
Plotters are insane. Discovery writers are sane.
Shut up. Because a plotter will look at the items that they need to carry. And they may not find it in that first scene they write, obviously, because the first scene that you write is not the beginning of the book, necessarily, the beginning of the story. Where you come in at it, hey, I've started books in the middle. Don't look at me like that. Just because you don't do it doesn't mean other people don't do it.
I fully accept that.
So
there are crazy discovery writers too.
don't you middle of the book shame me. Don't do it. I'll whoop your ass. Anyway,
I accept that I am one of those people that start with the first scene and write linearly to the end, and that's because that's how I like to read. And it offends my OCD nature to go ahead and start at some other place.
well, sometimes you find out that where you are in the book is actually the middle of the book, and you needed all these other things to happen in the past.
Or like the book that I'm currently writing, because I'm writing from an outline, and this is shocking. This is going to be shocking to you, but it's a co-authored work, so I have to write from an outline. And I get to part of the story, and I go, I am far too near the end for where I need to be here. There's something not right here. So I have to go back and talk to the collaborator, and we go, oh yeah, we probably need to stick this entire chunk about 3 chapters before what you just wrote. Oh, okay. I guess I'll go back and write that now.
Yeah. Welcome to my world.
That is not how I do things.
I understand that, but we also write completely different stuff. We just write different
One of the things about writing to an outline is it lures you along past where you would go as a discovery writer. I went ahead and was following the beats of the outline. And since the outline didn't include this part, I got to it too soon. And once I realized, okay, this is wrong. If I'd have been writing for myself, I would say, okay, I'm only halfway into the book. I still have other things that I need to be doing, and I would discover my way into some other trouble. And that's how it works for me. I discover my way into trouble, sometimes as a writer, sometimes as a character.
Yeah, now we're splitting hairs. We wandered off topic, by the way. Thanks for that.
Hey, I felt the need to clarify.
When I get to the end of a book, when I finish the book, I will go back and I will look at the beginning, where I think the beginning was in the story. Sometimes I will find out that, hey, there's this other thing I need to add in there to lead into this scene. Sometimes I look back at where that first scene was and I move it. Other times I axe it completely because it's bullshit. It was a good place to start when I was writing, but now it doesn't make sense compared to the rest of the book.
Do you know how many times I've done that?
Probably 0.
0.
Good for you.
I can't think of a single time where I've gone, finished a book and changed the opening, ever. And I don't know why that is. It's certainly not because I'm brilliant to start the damn story where it's the perfect place. It's just, I think I look at these stories as I'm telling the story, and where it starts is where it starts. And if I try to change that, it changes the arc of everything that comes after it. So since the entire novel flowed from that opening scene, I've never changed that opening scene. I may go puff it up a little bit, make sure that it's a little bit tighter, make sure that it's got the things it needs to grab, but I'm not going to change the scene.
Interesting. Again, 2 completely different styles and 2 completely different types of stories.
Totally true.
If you're writing the kind of thing where you with mysteries and things like that, you will find those places where you have to add those details. Sometimes that means changing the front scene. For me, anyway, sometimes that means
I've read 4 mystery novels, haven't had to do it yet.
That's just you then.
But there's at least the first book I should have. I should have done that with the very first book that I ever wrote. Well,
there you go. Bottom line is, the reason why I did those changes is not necessarily just because they didn't fit with how the book was. It was because they didn't draw attention to what I needed, or they were superfluous. Or I covered the same information in another chapter and thought that one was better.
My writing style, the way that I've tried to get away from it and tried some other means of writing, and I've decided to go back to what I was originally doing, because my brain doesn't work the way the other advice had, is I write out that first story. I write out that novel, and then I go back to the very beginning and I read through the entire thing again. Yeah. So all the little bits and pieces that I need to add to strengthen things that come later, when I finish the book, I know what they are. And I'm going through and I'm correcting spelling. I'm tailoring the dialogue and the narrative to fit the personalities of the characters that have developed.
Okay. Fair enough. But that said, we still have not really covered the beginning.
I can tell you one thing you should not do in the beginning.
What?
Do not start your novel or story
in a world
with a fight or needless action because you have not yet introduced the characters. I think that's a mistake. It's a mistake that a lot of beginning writers get into, where let's take a science fiction story, for example. Scene 1 is a bunch of people in fighter ships launching from their thing and talking like they're in Top Gun, launching from a character and talking like Top Gun. Nobody knows who those characters are. Nobody knows what the stakes are. Nobody knows what the setting is. You got nothing. It's flat, it's shallow, and the reader is going to set it down and walk away. It may seem counterintuitive, but you don't have to start with a lot of heavy tension, a lot of big things happening to grab the reader. What's going to grab the reader, you can write a story where someone is jogging down a path toward a red barn. And if you go ahead and you describe that path, you describe the details of that barn, you pull the emotions of the character as they're seeing it, how they're feeling the world around them, even if only for 2 paragraphs, even if only for a single paragraph, you have pulled the reader into the depth of the story. And that gives you the credit with that reader to continue on telling more of the story. If you don't put that depth in there to where they feel that they are in the character's head, they're going to stop. They have to think of that person as real. The stakes that they're in are real. That's what they have to do. And so that's one of the things you have to keep in mind for the beginning.
I think one of my favorite scenes, I can't remember the name of the book now, by Larry McMurtry. It describes the guy shooting the house. Or is it the doghouse? I don't remember which. It just describes him sitting there with his 357 shooting shooting something. That's it. That's all you get. You get the name of the guy, and that he's shooting this, and that, you know, he's drinking iced tea or whatever the hell it is, and he's blowing holes or something. You're like, okay. Or Tom Robbins in Skinny Legs and All, he starts it out with a Winnebago shaped like a turkey going down the road. It's just it causes such a cognitive dissonance to what you were expecting as the beginning of those books, that you're just kind of like, what? And then you start going through, but you're interested in the characters, you're interested immediately in what's going on. And it's almost movie-like in some ways. You know, you're fading in on a character doing something. You're fading in on a if you're writing noir, you're fading in on a character talking to themselves. You're doing whatever you're doing there to set that up. And that first scene can be that atmospheric setting very easily.
The short story that I just had most recently published was about a bounty hunter, and his alien race is like a minotaur, big, tall, with horns. So what did I do for the first scene? I had him getting out of his ship. He's getting out of the cockpit of his ship that was built for humans. So, of course, it's incredibly confining for him. He's having to twist his head around. He's having to walk through corridors kind of sideways to get to the door to get out of his ship. And then when the hatch starts coming down, the ramp starts coming down from the ship, it gets stuck halfway, and he has to jiggle the handle to make it work. And there's not a lot happening during those first couple of paragraphs, but you're in the character's head.
Yeah.
And you are in the scenery, you are immersed in the story, and you're off to the races.
And there's simple tricks you can do. Does a character notice something out of place? Does something happen around them and they're completely oblivious to it? Is there a conversation that catches them? Are they on the phone? There could be a billion different ways to introduce that character. You can do everything from looking at them as a third person limited omniscient narrator, describing this person walking down the road and then slowly getting their brain. There's all these different tricks you can do to set up that first scene to drag the reader in.
I personally think you should go with first person omniscient.
Okay, God. Anyway, you're such an asshole. Anyway, you completely derailed my train of thought, you son of a bitch. What are the cliches you should avoid with the beginning?
You know,
You sort of mentioned one, but what's another one? What's another tired one? The one you should not do?
I am not a believer in avoiding cliches.
What about?
I do not subscribe to that particular thing because if you look at my work, I've got tons of common tropes and cliches going on.
Fine.
But you can make them alive. You can make them fresh. You can make them yours.
What should you absolutely not do in the beginning of a book?
Bore your reader.
What should you absolutely not do in a book?
You're obviously fishing for something here.
Yes, I am.
Throw me a line here. Give me a little bit more to work on.
Where you're explaining everything that's going on in your world and setting
the wall
up
of
bullshit.
Text. You're talking about the wall of text.
I'm talking about info dump.
That's what I'm talking about too.
Do not start your story. Please do not do this. And the year, 2375, when vampires are taking over the earth. Fuck you. Start somewhere else better. Come on.
There's a book that I've been listening to in audio. I'm actually on book 4 in the series in audio. The premise sounded good. The character sounded great. And what's the first scene in the thing? This is an entry talking about how monetary systems work in this new universe. Oh. I immediately set the book back down and didn't come back to it for, I think, 2 or 3 weeks, maybe a month, where I said, I'm going to get through this damn interlude and get to the story so I can decide if I like it. No, just do not. Meanwhile, no, yeah, never mind.
Nobody cares.
If it's important information. It's important information, but you can insert that into telling the story.
Only say what you need to say for the characters and the people to understand it. If you want to go extemporate, make a goddamn footnote and move on, please.
There's some authors that can get away with having interludes where they have like Encyclopedia Galactica entries.
Yes, Douglas Adams was infamous for that with The Hitchhiker's Guide.
Don't start with it.
Yeah, don't start with it.
Do not make one the first scene.
There are better ways to do this. Much better ways to do this.
One of the things that I think that readers get hung up, or writers get hung up with in writing books, is they think that what they need to do in the start of the story, instead of having depth for the characters, they think they need to describe everything in sight.
Oh, yeah, there's another problem.
And that's another problem. Do not describe everything in sight. Do not have paragraphs chock full of the description of the bush in front of the house, the description of the berries on the bush, the description of the flies eating the berries on the bush in front of the house, etc. ad nauseum.
Unless you're writing literature, in which case all bets are off.
Do not commit literature. Do not.
Fuck you, Terry. People need to commit literature.
No one needs to commit literature. It's embarrassing.
Oh, God. Now you're saying just shit just to piss me off.
Words.
Motherfucker. Anyway,
no, let me wrap up the thought on that. I am totally serious that one of the things that people get hung up with is thinking that to form a mental picture, you have to describe everything in tremendous amounts of detail. And that could not be further from the truth. If I was going to describe a barn that somebody was running by, I could describe it by saying that it's red. I could describe it by saying it's a one-story barn. I can describe it by saying just a few features of the barn and the land that it's sitting on. I could do that in a couple of sentences. And that's the way you should do it. You shouldn't say, just say, he ran past the barn. You probably should go ahead at least the first time, describe what the barn looks like. Say he ran past the red barn, the stone barn with the red roof or the whatever. Just a few words to describe it. But you do not have to spend 14 paragraphs describing the barn, and you shouldn't.
And then basically you only need to set that up, and then you could also, the character's running around the barn, put his hand on the, warped and rotten That tells us something. That tells
Yes.
us without having to tell us anything else.
It tells you something about the condition of the barn.
Right.
One of the reasons you have to have at least some information is that, for example, a barn, depending on where you are, a barn is going to look different. So if you leave it as just the word barn, people are going to input what their experience is. And then when you put a detail in later on, they'll be like, wait a minute, what's second floor? What's second floor to a barn? How are you even getting up there? Why would anyone have a second floor of a barn? You want to at least have a little bit of information about something that's going to be important, that you're going to be using again, without going overboard.
Yeah, but at the same time, if I said barn, that if I write barn, that's what I think. I don't know that there's any other kind of barn.
You have to have it visualized in your head what you're seeing. A barn here, my father was a rancher. I have particular ideas about what a barn looks like.
So we have a different context. What I'm saying is me personally don't know the different types of barns.
You really don't need to. If you're writing a story and you say a barn, you as the writer, whether you have an experience with barns or not, are going to have a rough idea of what you expect to be there. Is it one story? Is it two stories? Is it stone? Is it rotting wood? Does it have a concrete slab? Whatever it is, you're going to have an idea of what it is, and you can put a sentence or two intermixed with what's going on about that so that you can get some key details to the reader so their vision matches your vision. That's an advanced, folks. This is an advanced topic. Depth is an advanced topic, and it's not anything that we're really supposed to be talking about here in the
today.
We need to go ahead and pull back from talking about depth.
Oh, Terry that wants to, has been doing this, but I think that actually is a part of this conversation, because that first page needs to have as much depth as it needs to have. It doesn't need. I don't like reader perspective. I don't like books that dive in and tell you. If you need to show me details or want to show me a lot of details, have the character move me through those details. If you need
and have their emotions about those details there,
or other things that they observe, if you color it that way through the character, then it becomes something else. It's no longer a wall of text. It is combined with glimpses into the character's personality and exactly what it is they're trying to do as we're setting them up. Those I find interesting. If I know the character's moving through this, if I have a character bitching about somebody else in front of them or whatever else, or whatnot, then we are instantly with that character and we are walking through the details. Describing a traffic jam, I describe that from the characters, and we feel the frustration from the character while they're stuck in the traffic jam.
Let's use something that might happen in one of your stories here.
One of your stories.
One of your stories. It's because a particular wording came to mind. Somebody stepping into a room and smelling the sweet stench of decaying bodies. This might be a serial killer who wants to see the rotting bodies, and he attaches emotion to it. It's a sweet smell to him.
Yes.
It's something that nobody else would somebody else stepping into the room would be gagging because of, whatever horrific word you're going to insert there.
Right.
In front of the scent, but you can choose to put that one word in front of it, the sweet scent of, and that has emotional context that tells somebody about what the person that's experiencing it is thinking.
Yeah. If somebody describes blood on a glass pane, beads of blood, they're either going to be concerned about it, or maybe if they caused the blood and they feel good about having caused the blood, they're going to describe it differently from the cop who comes after to see it. Very differently.
You can have a number of characters go through a scene or a setting, and all of them sound like the setting is completely different. The details are the same. The interpretation and the feeling about them can be different. And that's one of the keys that you have to have as you're writing, is every scene depends on the filter in which it is focused through to the reader.
If you want to get really nuts, and this is wonderful thing I love about psychological thrillers and my monster, my human monsters, is I can start a scene, start the book off with the killer or a lunatic, whatever you want to call it, talking about how awesome their painting is, describing all the different brush strokes and everything else, St. Michael doing whatever religious thingy that it's just beautiful. It's a work of art. It's better than anything Da Vinci drew. And we can get into that deal and we're like, what the hell is going on with this guy? And then in the very next scene is when you have the actual detective show up and look around what's going on. Bizarre finger paintings that, look like this, that, and the other. And suddenly you're like, whoa, wait a minute. It's stuff like that you can do to set up the different characterizations and get the character and make the character just leap into somebody's mind immediately. They may not like it.
Yeah, they may not like it. Also, what the character is doing it can be interesting. Have you ever seen Red?
I still haven't seen that flick.
It's about a bunch of ex-spies, former spies, maybe former spies. And the main character is on the phone talking to a lady friend of his, and they're just having this conversation. Oh yeah, this and that and the other, and so what are you up to? I'm working. And then you switch over to her, and she's got a body in the tub, and she's pouring lye in it, and she's assassinated somebody.
Exactly.
You're like,
exactly.
Ho, hello.
And it sets up perfectly. It's going to shock them into going, okay, these people are already interesting. What's going on here? Does he know what she does for a job? Does he know that this is what she means by that? Is there a lie being told between these two people? Do they know exactly what they're talking about? That changes the dynamics, and that's interesting for us to see that. And that kind of thing captures my attention immediately because I want to know who these people are.
That's an excellent way to do that. If you can have a character doing something unusual while sounding completely normal, like they do this every day.
Yeah, exactly.
That's always a good way to do it.
The body fell off the morgue table. John sighed.
Again, this is the third time this week.
That tells us a lot about who these people are without any other description. Just the way the detail is given.
He made the Y cut into the chest, and when the hand started twitching, he reached over and grabbed the leather rope and bound it back down to the table. And continued making his incision.
See, there's no description there. There is description, but that's not detailed. It just needs to be an overall feel and flavoring for what's going on. But that is a very good point. You've got the character doing something that may be horrific or sounds horrific, and they're just nonchalantly doing it. It tells you exactly how comfortable they are with the space, even though you're not. And are we doing a Halloween horror themed episode? Because every example we're giving here is about people getting cut up.
Maybe I need to watch Dexter again.
Yeah, maybe.
See, Dexter is a great example of having somebody do something horrific and just being, oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Or something great happens to him. He says, well, that's better.
Should I be happy about this?
Exactly. Should I be happy about this? I think I made a friend. Is that a good thing? Yeah, it's the character's deadpan delivery, but I mean, there's all sorts of things you can do that. You have a character just completely having a meltdown over stuff, and the other character's just, yeah, whatever, blah, 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 puts the phone down, looks at the other character and, curses about them, complains about them, whatever. Then you can throw a one-liner in there somewhere.
Or you could flip it around completely and have somebody just losing their shit and going on about how this critical thing is totally screwed up and blah, 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 blah. And the next scene, you find out it's, that was his stick figure drawing that he was submitting to some stupid contest that didn't matter worth anything, and no one should ever be annoyed about it.
There's just so many ways to start that book or start a story like that. But if you can get to the point where you can make the first page interesting to get the reader's eyes, then you've kind of done your job.
what makes a story interesting that's going to grab someone, and this is all my personal opinion, your mileage may vary, is the character. It's not the scene that you have them in. It's not what they're doing. It's the character and how they are interpreting what they're doing that's important. That's what's going to catch a reader, and that's what's going to keep them.
Yeah, it is the character, and even in quote unquote plot driven books, it's still the character, because that's who we're going to spend our time with writing along. There's probably in a book, usually there's a maximum of 2 main characters, I think, typically, unless you're going to larger stories. There's usually a maximum of 2 really main characters. The other ones may be periphery. Again, mileage may vary.
Yeah. Another thing that I think that you might want to avoid is starting off a story with the scenery. You got to have a person in that scenery. You can't just start off with the mountain view, high trees, snow, this, that, the other. There's nobody in that picture. Yep. You need to have somebody in that picture.
The other one is starting off with the weather.
Oh, dear God. It was a dark
and stormy night. Now, for Garrett's Inferno, I kind of broke that rule a little bit, but the weather is the weather and the heat and everything else is so integral to that book that it has to be there. It just has to be there.
You were talking cliches earlier that I might avoid in starting a book.
Oh, yeah.
I think maybe It Was a Dark and Stormy Night might be one that I would avoid. Now, it's not to say that I wouldn't do it. Maybe I would start off something with It Was a Dark and Stormy Night. And then the very second sentence would be, and the character held up the book and go, "This is trash," and threw it down again.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that too.
That may be the only time I would use that phrase.
Or they're, holding a Peanuts newspaper article. I don't know.
Exactly. Something like that. You could get away with it. And that's in a lot of ways, that's how I get away with having the various cliched things. It's because it's being interpreted through the person that these cliched things are happening.
And they're interpreting it as the cliche. They're in on the joke.
Sometimes, or I use the interpretation of the emotions of the situation to make it personal, to where it doesn't feel that bad. It may feel like a common setting, but it doesn't feel like a cliche.
Okay, fair enough. Writing cliches. I really don't think the beginnings, if you go look at, 25 different books, look at the first 3 paragraphs, 25 quote unquote successful books, or whatever, however you want to rate them, whatever. I think you'll see some of the same tricks being used over and over again. Depending on who the writer is, the trick may be hidden better, but it's there.
That's where practice and skill come into play.
Correct.
The more you do something, the better you'll become at it.
And that's where the depth question comes in, is how much depth can you create in as few words as possible? And that means working on the action, and that means working on the character's movement through it.
When I took the depth workshop that I took that taught me a little bit about this, you had 400 words in the assignment to accomplish certain goals. And that was hard. I would write it out, and then I'd find myself having to cut and balance. And what else could I stick to that word count? Because I wanted to go long. Every time I'd write it, I'd write more words, trying to accomplish the things that I was supposed to accomplish. And being short in doing it. You can't drag it on. You've got to immerse the character or the reader in the depth quickly. Otherwise, they're going to leave. And there's a skill to that. And you may not even think about it, but you've got to do it quickly and then get the story rolling. 400 words to set the setting, and then get going with the plot.
Yeah, go look at 10 of your favorite books. Go look at the first couple paragraphs. Go look at the first page. Give it first 3 paragraphs. First 3 paragraphs.
Well, I'm going to say it a little different than that. Read how long it takes to set the setting, and then when the action starts. Sometimes you'll find that the setting is being set while the action is taking place, but the setting if you love an author, you're going to find that setting does not take long to get them in the setting before things are happening.
I like to think of it back when the days when 3D rendering was going on. You can almost see the details coming in, because the character is basically standing in front of a blank white wall or a blank black wall. Doesn't matter. Either way, the bottom line is the the way I want to try and write everything is the details and the setting just start to go up around them. We're starting off with that character and then slowly building the world around them, like in VR, as they're walking through it or moving through it or whatever it is they're doing. And so every time they do something or say something, I can give another detail about where they are to try and make it interesting for the reader.
And this is not applicable to beginnings, but you need to do this for every scene. If you have white space, you're skipping a viewpoint, you're skipping a chapter, you've got to reset them in whatever scene they're in, the setting that they're in, every single time. Because you can't just pick up with a scene break and then Bob said blah, 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 blah. I don't care about Bob. What's Bob doing? Where's Bob at? What's happening here?
So-and-so cursed at the display, science fiction.
Yeah.
They're looking at a console, whatever else.
Yeah, and you can, it doesn't take very many words, especially after the beginning. The 400 words that I mentioned is like for the beginning of a book or story. When you're going back to after a scene break, it can be in that very first paragraph that you've reset the scene and you're off to the races.
Right.
It does not have to be long at all.
No, you just need to practice it. And you need to think of that. I would say basically it's 400 or 500 words. You really got to hook them.
At the very beginning of the book, yes.
So, it's one of the, but again, this is what I'm talking about. I will go back and do that work after the book is finished.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
So that means that I have to go back and I have to look and I have to clean up that crap. And in some cases, that means changing that first scene. So there, Bubba. Anyway, that notwithstanding, what are other horrible ways to introduce a story? What are other horrible ways? Or have we covered most of them?
If you introduce a character as a caricature or a stereotype without making them an individual, then you run the risk of having people put your book down.
Okay.
It's a subtle sort of thing, but you have to make every person that appears in the beginning of a book, you have to make them an individual. The reader has to think, okay, this is an actual character, not Joe Blow walking down the street with his American ball cap on that is no different than every other one.
Unless he's walking around with an inflatable sex doll under one arm.
Then he becomes an individual. See, at that point, he's no longer a stereotype.
Exactly, but that you can introduce them as a stereotype, and then draw attention to the stuffed dummy underneath their arm.
The moment you have the stuffed dummy appear, it's no longer a stereotype.
No, it's not. But what I'm saying is, until you get to that point, it can be a construction worker with a hard hat, with wearing the flannel, with a scarf around while they're walking that way. And then during that entire paragraph, you can mention the squeaky sound. And it's his fingers moving across the sex doll because it's falling out of his grasp.
Oh, thank God. Thank God that's what it was. I was very afraid something else was happening. The squeaking was going to be, something you'd have to put a duck quack over here.
How do they get on this blow up sex doll topic?
You brought that up all by yourself.
I was just like, what would be so odd that it would drag people's attention?
Here, if you write a scene coming into a book where you've got Joe Bob puts on his hard hat and walks into the construction scene, you start describing the scene, but interspaced through there, you have everyone stopping dead in their tracks and staring at him as he went by with their mouths open. And then you get to the supervisor coming down the steps on the trailer and going, "God damn, Joe Bob, what the hell are you doing in that tutu?"
Yes. Or
I lost a bet.
Or you could have that elicit no comment from anybody. Nobody even notices.
Everybody thinks Joe Bob should be wearing that tutu.
And maybe they're all wearing tutus as well.
That would be one hell of a story. The construction site would be totally different than anything you would envision. And
just imagine them turning it into a musical. They're dancing on girders and everything else.
They're doing a construction set rendition of the Sharks and the Jets.
Oh, God.
West Side Story.
On that note, we should bring this to a close. If you want to express your umbrage at something we said or make a comment about this episode,
or see Paul in a tutu,
or shut up, Terry. You can send us an email at robot. See what you did? You can send us an email to show@debrobotssociety.com. You can tweet me at Paul_E_Cooley. You can join the listeners of the Dead Robot Society Facebook group where all the insanity happens. And we would love to see you there. We're pretty active group. You can watch our ugly mugs at youtube.com/DRS podcast. And of course, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/DRS podcast, where for as little as $1 a month, you can get access to exclusive content and mostly uncut pre-shows. Mostly. And we'd be remiss if we didn't mention our wonderful host, Podhoster, who makes all 4 bazillion episodes of the Dead Robot Society available for your ear holes. And getting back to those patrons, if you're a $10 patron, you get your name read. So what do we have this week? We have Sue, I'm too old for this shit, Bayman, JD Barkin, Nathan Lebnish, best, whatever, Petty, Coral Davison, Kelson Deal, a skunk sat on a stump, the stump thunk, the skunk stunk. Isabel Cushy, Rick trying to figure out the voice of my aliens, Shaw. Rick, we talked about this. Call me. Lisa Slack, Sandy Manpants, Cheryl Winters, Tracy Bodine, John Kilgallen, Devin Lee, Drew Terry's happy endings are a red herring Bernardi. Terry.
I don't know about that.
Chris Winder, Andre Conde Moraes, DJ Chamberlain, and J.R. Handley hates pirates pedantically paddle pooping poodle pedigree.
Ooh, that was a nice try. You know, I was thinking about that. You were talking about how, you know, the pre-show, the Patreon show is uncut. I think you should say that it's bigger. Longer, and uncut.
Look. What are we, South Park? Have we suddenly turned into Trey and Matt Parker? Bigger, better, and uncut?
Why not?
Oh, God. I wouldn't mind their money. Just saying. All right, folks, with that, we are done for this week. Join us again next week for more insanity. And till then, keep writing.
Bye-bye.
Bye.